welcome to another episode of People of Media. And today I get to spend time with Jay Allred, the co-founder and CEO of Richland Source, and share some things from his story and his history on how to create a media organization and engineer that media organization for success. And so I'll also say that Jay's a handsome guy. He's got a great haircut that I personally admire.
You share a
And
barber.
welcome to the show, Jay.
Thanks, Johnny. I was really glad to be invited, and I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Oh man, we had a fun conversation, and now we get to just continue it. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to jump right in,
Go for it.
and I want to start with a little bit of your origin story. So your media origin story, which I know is
Mhm.
varied, but that does speak to why you've been able to make some of the decisions you've been able to make for success. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your origin?
Yeah, so I grew up with a father who was in newspapers from as long as I could remember where he worked. So pretty much from birth. He grew up on the production side of newspapers. So I always describe my dad he was a super fan of the First Amendment, but he was not a practitioner in the newsroom.
Yeah.
And so he worked in production, he worked as a journeyman pressman, he worked in sales, and then eventually, as I got older and his career developed, he ran newspapers or groups of newspapers or divisions for um, large local news organizations. And so that's what I got to watch. So I got to watch a newspaper publisher or general manager do his job when newspapers were as powerful as they were going to be.
Yeah.
My dad had the distinction of having impeccable timing in terms of when he retired. He basically retired, like 2 years after Craigslist was invented, which was a great time, which was a fantastic time to leave the local news business because it was right as the internet was starting to really disrupt it. So I got to watch somebody do his job when local news organizations were at their most influential, which
Yeah.
was good for me.
Yep. Yeah, quick diversion. What at the time when he was doing all this work, what would you say was his superpower?
Um, he would make like he was unapologetic for what a local newspaper's role was, or what he felt like the local newspaper's role was in a community, which was to be an advocate for the community that it served.
Yeah.
And that would mean that as a publisher, that meant that sometimes they would do really hard confrontational journalism about individuals or groups that were damaging the community. And so when I say he was a super fan of the First Amendment and a super fan of journalism, he did his best to create an environment where really good journalism could happen, while at the same time understanding that a publisher's role is to, or at least at that time, a publisher's role is to be involved in the community that he or she serves.
Mm.
So, while his reporters might be reporting on corruption at the Chamber of Commerce, not that there was any, but like he would be at those Chamber of Commerce meetings though, because those two things needed to happen at the same time. Those relationships with the business community needed to be there, so that there was trust that when hard stories were written or great stories were written, that there could be some trust that those were coming out of a place that had the community's best interests at heart.
Right.
So I think that he had the ability to sort of understand that both of those things, being an advocate for the community and also watching over the the power of the community, that those two things could easily and comfortably coexist inside of one company. They just needed, like, the company needed to have that vision.
We're going to unpack that for a long time. We're not going to, but that right
Sure.
there keeps coming up for me as a theme. The
Mhm.
idea, because otherwise you are just a watchdog, and
Yeah.
that's not good, right?
No, we sort of, the way that we describe it to people is like, there's all kinds of value to watchdogs, but what communities need right now more are guide dogs.
Yeah.
And so we see ourselves as a guide dog. Um, there's times when we're going to bark and maybe even bite, but most of the time we're helping you navigate traffic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love it.
that's most of our time is spent as a guide dog.
Yep, right. And building trust.
Yeah,
And
right. I mean, like if you take that metaphor out, right? I mean, if you have a guide dog, you are likely disabled or blind, or you need help moving through your life, right? So you have to trust the dog
yeah,
because the dog is telling you it's safe to cross the street. Um, so if a local news organization is acting in that manner, then yeah, they need to be trustworthy.
yep. And then you can take out, right? Like if you're trusted and then you have to bite every once in a while, people will
Then
allow
people
that.
are okay with it. Well,
Yeah,
people allow it, and people actually, it's like, oh, good, you're protecting us.
yeah,
You're looking out for us.
yeah. So yeah, so keep on. How did that influence your travels
So,
into media?
so, um, so I grew up, like I said, I grew up with a dad that was in the business. I did all of the stereotypical things. Had my first newspaper when I was in third grade or whatever. I worked at my college newspaper. I worked in my high school newspaper. I worked for USA Today for a while when I was really young, like in my early 20s. And then I left the business for a long time. I don't know, I think I wanted to strike out on my own. I didn't want to do what my dad did. I don't know, like my psychologist or my psychiatrist can unpack all of that stuff. But I ended up going into the photography business sort of like in a support role during the transition for professional photographers from analog cameras to digital cameras. So this gave me a real opportunity to learn about technology and emerging technologies in a very analog industry. I mean, there's not much more analog than film and chemistry, right? And then when professional digital cameras came along, it really disrupted that industry.
Yep,
So I had this opportunity to sort of go through a total disruption of an industry in a completely different context, learn a ton about technology and imaging and way to manage information and move information across the network and all these different things. Um, so I worked in that industry for 17 years, ran an internal startup, grew up in the industry, became kind of an adult professional inside that industry, and had kind of done everything that I was going to do. I'd sort of, reached that natural crossroads in a career. So I was looking for my next opportunity, and a friend of mine told me about um, my co-founder who was trying to build a local news startup for the city that we lived in, and he was having a really difficult time putting a team together that was going to be able to do that.
mm,
Uh, he he knew what he wanted, but he didn't exactly know how to get there because he didn't have any background in publishing. Um, and so we met for breakfast, and a week later, I was, signed, said, let's go, and signed up for the adventure, and off we went. So that's kind of how I got back into publishing and have been at Richland Source now for 11 years. And I do not plan to go anywhere other than this industry for the rest of my career because I feel like I'm doing the work that I was supposed to be doing
what is it
all
about the
along.
work? What is it about the work that makes you feel that feeling of? Because that's a very strong statement. Like I'm here, and I think for the rest of my life, the rest of my career, I'm going to be
Mhm.
here. I'm going to stay here. I'm not leaving. Okay, there's conviction there. So where does that come from?
Yeah. I think for me, it's that you get to so first of all, this is a very exciting business that is full of opportunity right now. So it is, yes, it's disrupted, and yes, that there's all kinds of questions around it, and there's a ton of uncertainty, but along with that is a ton of opportunity. And
Yeah,
so I tend to view the world through that lens of like, I mean, I'm cognizant of challenge, but I try to see the opportunity in that challenge.
yeah,
Um, I've never felt more deeply connected to the place than I live than I do right now. I mean, and I think that working in local newsrooms has that. You just know more than you ever thought you could know about a place that you live and the people that are in it. Fundamentally, I like people. I like communities. I like
Yeah.
being around them. And so this just kind of gives me a lot of energy to work in this job, regardless of how difficult or challenging it is. And we get to see the impact of the thing that we did.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, what is there's all kinds of studies that people do about finding value or worth in your career,
Yeah.
finding, and more often than not, people want to feel as though the work that they're doing matters.
Yeah.
I know that the work that we do every day matters,
Yeah.
matters to somebody. I mean, it might not matter to tens of thousands of people on any given Tuesday, but it matters to somebody.
Yeah.
And the aggregate impact of all of those somebodies over a period of time is pretty, it can be pretty big. And so, like that, I get to see that every day, and that's hugely gratifying.
Yeah. That makes sense. There's every once in a while I come across somebody. Not everybody has that level of conviction that's in media. I think a lot of people do, especially a lot of the owners, like the owners and
Hmm.
founders. But not everybody. But there are people that I run across. Let's see. I think Logan Aguirre is over at 417 Magazine is one of those
Hmm.
people that just has that. That's what you're describing, which I'm going to put in my own words. You're a part of the community, and your work is serving a community that you love and are deeply entrenched in, and that tie has created another layer of meaning for you or purpose in your job. If I'm saying it correctly.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially like speaking as a person, like
Yeah.
as a human being. Yeah, that is definitely true for me. Um,
Yeah.
and as an organization, we try to do like the way we try to explain it to people is we make every effort to do journalism with people instead of to them unless they deserve it.
Yeah.
Like it's like we will do journalism to you if you deserve it, but most of the time we're going to try to do journalism with you. And that just I think that that's it's a cute way of saying what's true for most local newsrooms, which is that most of the time in a local environment you're doing journalism with people, and then every once in a while you have to do it to them, but that's in the interest of the community.
Yeah.
And but as a person, yeah, I mean, I think you restated the way that I feel about it pretty accurate.
Yeah. That's huge, man. And I think that energy, I think people need to like even what you even some there's something you said that gave me an emotional reaction. And it was that it's an exciting time to be in media because it's a time full of opportunity. That's not the language that you usually hear, actually. Like a lot of the language you hear is it's in decline, it's
Hmm.
it's trying to redefine itself, it's in disruption, all these things.
Well,
You got
there's segments. Well, yeah, but there's segments of this business that are definitely in decline.
yeah,
And I mean, reckoning with that, like being practical about what worked for my dad and
mm-hmm,
his colleagues does not necessarily work now. Um, it just doesn't. So you have to understand, like, all right, well, in those shifting, disruptive times, like, where is actually the opportunity? It
yeah,
might not be in classified advertising because Facebook Marketplace is a much less, it's a much more vibrant, frictionless place to do things.
yeah,
So, in the absence of that, like, what other value do you provide? And like, what other role can you play? And I think that there's segments of the media business that are definitely in decline or dead.
mm,
Um, but there's segments like there's whole sectors of what we do or did do as local news entrepreneurs that are just people are thirsty for.
mm,
They want more of. We just have to have the courage to go out and be those organizations for the communities that we're serving. And each one of them might be a little bit different because that's the thing about local, it's local.
Yes.
Like, I mean, Birmingham is not the same as Mansfield, which is not the same as Brooklyn. And
Right.
you have to like reflect the place that you are from.
Which is why Facebook can't take that from you. And that's why Google can't take that from you. Right? They may be able to take
Yeah.
components, but it's a
Well, you
different
just have to,
relationship.
yeah, I mean, you just have to reckon with the fact that environments change. As a business person, if you're unwilling to change, if you're unwilling to either respond to environmental change that you don't control, or alternately control everything that you have within your ability to control, you're not going to be in business for very long.
Yeah.
I mean, like you might have a good run, but eventually the environment's going to change and then you're not going to be here anymore. We're trying to be here for the long haul. So it means that change is a constant. I know that's a cliche, but it's just like,
Yeah.
you have to do the things that your community needs you to do or that your market needs you to do, your customers.
You're comfortable in disruption.
Yep, I'd say so.
And does that come from being in an analog industry that you had to be in the middle of a nasty transformation and saw the opportunity there? Like, would you say that had any bearing on it?
Yeah, I think I certainly that experience, right, of like being around long enough to see the like start in the analog world, see the disruption coming, help the company, be part of a team that helped the company navigate through the disruption and then come out the other side and be okay,
Yeah.
certainly tells me that like, oh, okay, well, you can do this. And then every single day in the local news industry is, you get to reckon with that. I mean, we were all going to pivot to video and then we weren't, and we all got free traffic from Facebook and then we didn't.
Yeah.
um, we all got crushed by the Google algorithm and then we didn't. Like, like these sorts of things, like, the constant is you're you're interacting with a group of humans called a city or a village or a town or a region or whatever, and you're trying to provide some value to them, both in readers or advertisers or, stakeholders, the people in your community that keep you going. So, yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable in that because my assumption is that it won't be the same. Like,
Yeah.
my assumption is that it won't be the same. And so, like, if you can live in that, like, if you can live with that and sort of be okay with it, change is easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
And it's not easy to be comfortable there. Like, I think I think there are some people who have an easier time being comfortable in that place than
Mhm.
others. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
but
And
but
you
it's necessary.
you kind of need both kinds of people though too, right? Like if you're like walking around and you're just constantly changing shit all of the time, I mean, you're going to drive your employees bananas.
Yeah.
You're going to create uncertainty and you're never going to like actually get to the core of what your audience actually needs because you never stop long enough to understand whether or not something is working. So, like, you need to have disruptors in an organization. You need to have people that are comfortable in that place. And you also need people that are really solid, steady eddies that are able to, we're going to buckle down and we're going to do 300 stories a month and we're going to publish them in this way and it's going to be uber consistent and people are going to be able to count on it and we're not freestyling all of the time.
Yeah.
You have to have both kinds of, like, you have to have both of those parts of an organization to be, in my view, to be successful.
Yeah. There are these principles that I call it. I think I have three driving principles that I think everybody comes under at some point: harmony, progress, and order. I think those are
Mhm.
those, and I think people tend to have one of those that's above the others. Um,
Yeah, and progress, like if you're in progress, you are generally going to, you're going to disrupt harmony and order.
yes.
If you're in order, you're going to retard progress. if you're in harmony, you know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
we call it managing polarities,
Yeah.
where, you're going to have this like disruptive, progressive time, and that's going to be really difficult on people that need order and structure. But the constructive way to approach that is do that, bring some order to the chaos, discard the things about the chaos that didn't work, move to the next level, settle for a minute, rest, and then add disruption again. But it's
Yeah.
just, like sort of knowing that you're going to do it on purpose is different than doing it like constantly by accident. I mean, like
Right.
we try to do it on purpose. You know,
Yes.
it's like we try
Yes.
to do it on purpose, and we're not always successful there, but our team is really awesome at that, and we found that it's been useful for us.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna mark that moment, right? Because I think, like I've read books where a single sentence changed my life. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Where that you find a principle, and it's like it might sound simple, and it might sound like it could be in a fortune cookie, but actually, if you live by it, it could
Hmm.
change things. And I
Yep.
love that idea of doing it on purpose. Like as a there's a lot that can just happen to you,
Yep.
but you could actually go and run towards the same bad thing, and you've got a different psychological tool set when you run at it versus when you let it tackle you.
Well, yeah, and I think that like it. I don't know if this is what you wanted to talk about or not, but I mean, I think um, one of the things that we did really early in the organization, like literally within the first, I don't know, 6 or 7 months of the organization's lifespan, was to try to sit down and think about, all right, well, what are our values? Like, we didn't write a mission statement. We didn't do a lot of those corporate things, but which maybe would have been important for us, but at the time we didn't know what we wanted to do for people, but we did know we had a sense of what we thought were important, like like that was going to matter to us. And so we did that, and we've stuck with those values from the beginning, and they've really helped guide decision making in those disrupted times. So like if you're in the middle of an uncertain time, you are dealing with those things, we're able to go back to those values and say, all right, well, does this decision that we want to make or this course that we want to take, does it fit inside the values that we've all agreed to? Um, those are really important. Like that was a really important decision to make early, that I didn't know it was going to be that important like I would not have predicted that's like, oh wow, this is going to be a foundational decision I'm going to look back on and say, I'm really glad that we did that, because it's guided a lot of the progress that we have made. It informs the character of our organization, and it helps us hire people, work with people, make decisions that are in line with that. So it's helped us be consistent over the years.
Can you summarize those
Sure.
values?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a number of them, but like I'll kind of give you sort of some high points here. One of them is to bring people together. And so that shows up in the fact that we do a ton of in-person events,
Yep.
that we try to do journalism in person and with people. Um, we, one of our values is to begin with gratitude. So this is a little counterintuitive for journalism organizations, and it was definitely counterintuitive in 2013.
Yeah.
To just sort of say, hey, I'm really glad I'm here. I'm thankful for what I have. Um, you know, um, so we do that. One of them is to tell great stories. This can be read, it's very intentional, and it can be read in a lot of different ways, right? It can be tell up, great can mean uplifting, great can mean capital J journalism, great can mean necessary, great can mean award winning. Uh, it can mean a lot of things, but the idea is that you're a storyteller, you're a chronicler, so like do your job well.
Yeah.
Um, try, learn, and repeat. This is the thing that we we felt like it was important to create a culture where innovation and trying things was a value,
Mhm.
and that the objective was to try something and then learn something from that and then repeat the process. I wanted to create a culture where, and our founding team, the people that are, some of them are still with us today, we were just wanted to create a culture where it was okay to fail.
Mhm.
Like, it was, as long as you learned something and like there was something that you came out of it with, it was okay to try stuff. One of our values is to have fun. So, when you see us do silly stuff or, do stuff that doesn't feel like Walter Cronkite, that's
Mhm.
that value in action. Look for solutions. This was based in our work in solutions journalism. We just wanted, typically a lot of times old school journalists, you're looking for problems. We're trying to find solutions. So these are things that jump out. Those are the stated values, some of the
Right.
stated values that we have.
Right. And so you get to look at a decision that's coming down the pipe, right? In a time of disruption, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made, and you get to say, all right,
Right.
how does it hold up if we just run it through this funnel?
Yeah. Right.
Value.
I mean, it's just like, let's just check this against our values.
Yeah.
So if we're going to make a decision about controversial reporting, that's going to like, is this serving our community or is this serving us?
Yeah.
And if we can only say it serves us, then it starts us asking the question of like, okay, well, why are we doing this again?
Yeah. Back to basics, man. Right.
Yeah,
Back
just
to the
it just
fundamental.
it lets you involve your team in checking your actions versus the things that you say are important. And if that's, I think for us, that's just been it's been an important decision that we made very early on that we've tried to carry through, which has led to a culture that welcomes feedback and embraces, embraces failure as a part of learning, and is okay with change,
Right.
is resilient in those moments. That's a lot. It's not necessarily due to me. It's just due to the culture that the team has embraced and built.
Right. Yeah. Because culture. Yeah. Culture. Yeah. I get what you're saying about it not just being you, but also you're a contributor to that culture. You're.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm the person that can mess it up the fastest.
Yeah.
I think
Exactly.
like at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like if you want to set fire to it, I'm the person that can burn it down the quickest by being inconsistent and having power.
Yeah. That's right, man.
So like,
Yeah.
like it's like if you want to find the guy that can burn it down the fastest, I'm your guy.
Yeah.
So like the values matter the most that I uphold them,
Yes.
because if I'm willing to not do that, then everybody else has permission not to. So
100%. And
yep.
it's overnight. It's overnight that that's the case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It can take 11 years to build it and you can burn it down in one day.
Yeah.
So it's just like you have to be careful.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So going back to the early days, then the early days
Uh-huh.
of your current endeavor, there are a couple things that you did differently, or you
Yep.
took the road less traveled. So what are some of those things?
Okay. So I think the first thing was we had the value, and and there are a lot of journalism startups now that have this privilege.
Hmm.
We had some runway. We had some capital to work with. And we, Carl and I, my co-founder and our principal investor, he's our principal investor. We had this conversation. I was said, okay, well, we can go at this two ways. We can go at this like folding chairs, folding tables, my garage, and we can build this thing, really, really slowly. And we can prioritize cash flow over impact. And, arguably, this is the better decision for you to make because there's a lot of risk in this industry. So being careful matters. But in his case, I said the other way that we can do this, it's going to take longer time to get paid back. But we can have an impact faster, but it means we're going to have higher headcount, and we're just going to all have to be okay with that. Like, it's going to cost you a lot more money. And he's like, let's do impact first because I want to make an impact. I want to, I want to start to change the conversation around what it is to live and work here. And I know that we're going to need to do a lot of independent local journalism over a period of years in order to change that conversation. So let's get busy. And so, okay, that was like an initial investment or an initial decision that proved to be really important in terms of it did a couple of different things. It cost Carl more money, number one, like to be honest, it required him to have, it was a gut check for him in terms of saying, I want to do this over the long haul. But the other thing that it did, I think that was really important was it changed our sense of our responsibility to our community. We weren't just sort of another small business. We were here to make a difference. And we were here to make a difference now. And so it changed the way that I was able to talk to people about our commitment, our ambition, the impact that we desired to have. And so we got after it really early in that sense. I think the second thing that we did was we made a conscious decision to not hire a developer, a technologist, a computer programmer, anyone in that field. We invested in people that were going to either generate income or generate reporting. Those were the two, that was what we invested in. We didn't have a big staff when we started, but one of the things that we did not have was a developer. That was a question, especially back in 2013. Having a developer was something that a lot of startup organizations had, right? Because they were trying to build all their own stuff. We chose to work with a vendor that was imperfect and didn't do every single thing that we wanted, but it had enough of what we wanted in order to produce the thing that the audience needed, which was the reporting, and that the advertisers needed, which was the marketing. And
Yeah.
we in today's language, that would be saying we put the audience first.
Mm.
Back then, it was just, there was not really a word for it. But in today's language, that would say you're putting audience first, and you're building a tech stack. You're building on a stack. You're not building your own thing. And in our case, that was what we wanted to do. And then I think the third thing that was very important for us decision wise was we we chose to think of our news mix in a way that was unusual at the time.
Mm.
Um, we, it's pretty traditional in local media. You do a lot of crime coverage, a lot of courts coverage. It sells newspapers, it drives clicks, tons of police reports, a lot of, report on every accident, and we knew reliably that all of that coverage would drive clicks, but we were trying to rethink the way that a news diet could look. So we took this very decided solutions oriented lens and we based it on the crime rate. So the crime rate in Richland County is give or take on any given year, it's like somewhere around 6%. We looked at it and said that means that roughly 6% of the people in the community are involved in the criminal justice system in one way or another. Um, all right, well, if we double that, like that means 94% of the people are not. So even if we double that and we go to 12%, that means that we got 88% of our news hole available to the people that are not involved in the criminal justice system. So like, let's write about them.
Yeah.
And we took at the and let's look at the community that we serve undoubtedly has a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have Midwestern post-industrial economic problems. We are, like Detroit had blight, we have blight too. Um, there's a drug problem. Um, there's a violence problem. We chose to try to look at those things through the lens of, well, okay, but is there anyone else that's responding to these problems in ways that they're having some success with? Which at the time was another organization in journalism called the Solutions Journalism Network, which was founded at roughly the exact same time we were founded. So we sort of found each other very early in the process. And I realized this is like the Solutions Journalism Network gave language and structure to a thing that I only had a feeling about. I had a feeling that I wanted this, but I didn't know what it was until I found the Solutions Journalism Network and our team found the Solutions Journalism Network. And then this just became sort of the architectural bones around the way that we built our most important and ambitious reporting. We built it on the lens, through the lens of, well, who's doing this better? Who's handling infant mortality better? Who's handling poverty better? Who's handling affordable housing better? What can we learn from them? And that just became a hallmark of the way that we approached the community. It took a while for the community to understand it. It took a while, frankly, for journalism in general to understand solutions journalism. It's taken on a much bigger role in local journalism than it had 2013. But those were three decisions. So we looked at impact first, um, audience first, and we did that through not hiring a developer initially. And we looked at it from solutions first. And those three key decisions early on made it um, made it easier for us to occupy what the community ultimately identified as a void in the market. They were like, "Oh, this is different," and we didn't know whether it would be something that people wanted, and as it turned out, they did. Like, it was
Yeah.
a but it was risky when all of those decisions were risky at the time and counterintuitive at the time. But we thought we saw a market gap, and so we tried to fill it.
So what has been the fruit of that? So, and how many years in are you at this point? You know,
So 11 years in, we started out with a staff of 8. Roughly half were on the revenue side, half were on the newsroom side. We now have a staff of 22. Roughly half are on the revenue side, half are on the newsroom side, maybe a little bit skewed toward the newsroom now, but we try to maintain that balance. We now serve 3 counties rather than one, so we've doubled the audience that we serve. Um, we're really proud of the journalism that we've been able to produce and the impacts that we've been able to produce inside of our community. The you know we're actively out there producing journalism that would not be produced otherwise and serving advertisers and businesses with products and exposure to an audience that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get. So I mean, I'm proud of a lot of things, Johnny, honestly, but
yeah.
mostly it's sort of like the growth of the team and the ability of the team to embrace these values and then, show them to our community over the day to day, which is the grind of it all, right?
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah. So I've heard. Is there a rule there? Like I've heard before people say, you want to have half revenue side, half content side, um, and that those should reflect each other. Is that a rule of thumb, or is that just how it shook out for you?
I think it's kind of a rule of thumb. I mean, I don't think we sort of like say, okay, well, if you hire one reporter, you have to hire a salesperson. I just think that like the way that our business works, the way that we built it is we wanted to have a revenue stream that either could fully support the news operation or could be on track to do that.
Yeah.
And we just think that it's a very important thing for all news organizations to do, especially new ones. Um, when I see a startup news organization that doesn't have a revenue person, no matter how small the team is, if it's a team of two, one of them should be revenue.
Yeah.
Um, that person might also have to be audience and product and all kinds of things, but
Yeah.
like somebody should be thinking about money.
Yeah.
Um, when I see startup news organizations that are, 10 to 1 newsroom to revenue or 10 to 1 newsroom to fundraising, I worry
Yeah.
because you're burning a lot of cash um, with, you know, you're asking a lot of that one or two people
Yeah.
to cover all those costs. And even when, we knew that we knew that we were going to try to make an impact early and that we were going to invest a lot, but part of that investment was on the revenue side.
Mm.
And we stuck to those guns because we think it's really important.
That makes sense because I do run into I get to talk with publishers a lot, but I also get to talk with
Mm-hmm.
ad directors and even salespeople. And I do know that some salespeople end up feeling like the
A
dread.
lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah, yeah, the
You
dread
know,
of having to carry the organization
yep.
and to start over every month or every issue.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, and we learned a lot along the way, right? And from really smart people like David Grant and Tim Griggs and folks that taught us that look, if you're going to start a membership program, everybody's on the bus, right? The newsroom is a driver in terms of that membership program. People are not like, let's be honest, people are not signing up for a membership program at a local news organization because they love their salesperson. They love the reporters.
yeah,
They love the product that they're consuming. And so those people in the newsroom, they are on the team.
yeah,
Like there isn't a revenue side
yeah,
anymore. Like there's no wall between those two departments. I mean,
yeah,
we like to think of it like there's not a wall anymore. There's a picket fence, right? It keeps
yeah,
the dog in the yard, but you talk to your neighbors.
yeah,
Like, like,
yeah,
like it's just not practical to have a wall. You need to be all on the same team. And so like we learned from a lot of really smart people about how to do these things. We didn't invent them. We just, when somebody taught us something smart, I think if we have a skill, it's that if you give us a task and you teach us something, we will employ it. Like it's not academic to us. Like it's
yeah,
like, let's go. And I think if we have like one sort of defining characteristic, it's that we um our team has the courage to try shit other people won't try.
yeah, man. Come on.
And
Yes.
yeah, and so there's a let's frickin' go attitude
Yeah.
in our organization that sometimes gets us in trouble,
Yeah.
but a lot of times it works out. And that's why I'm really proud to work with everybody that I work with because like, if they don't have that attitude and they don't bring that to the table, then you know, we don't we don't accomplish much.
Do you know Kenny Castrow over at Red
Yeah,
Bank Green,
for sure.
Broad
Yep.
Street?
I respect the hell out of Kenny.
Yeah.
Just have a great deal of respect for him because he has built something in Broad Street he has had a singular purpose there and a focus and his vision there that is he's very clear on what he does and what Broad Street does and who it serves. And I have a great deal of respect for him on that because that was when he did that, that was also super counterintuitive.
Yep.
It was an objectively dumb thing to do. I mean, the only dumber thing than starting Broad Street was starting Richland Source.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
but Kenny had a vision and he understood what his market was, and he had a sense that um, he has this rare combination of a salesman's heart and a developer's brain,
Yeah.
and those two things talk to each other in a very fluent language, and they've yielded really great products for the local news industry.
Yeah.
So he's to be commended for that.
And similar culture. So that's why I
Yep.
mentioned it, right? Because you talked about
Hmm.
and I would even say like a disposition towards action, right? Like
Yep.
that's
Yep.
what you're describing in your organization.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Both organizations have a bias toward action.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's
Thanks, man. I appreciate this conversation. Thanks for having me.
dude, I love it. I love it. I wanted to see if you have any. So we covered most of what I wanted to cover. I will say
Sure.
I would love if you have a second to tell me um, main revenue streams and then
Yeah.
emerging revenue streams that you see coming.
Sure. Um, so the current state of things, we're really happy with the way that the pie is divvied up,
Yeah.
right? So I can tell you where we are. But I will tell you that we started this journey in 2018. It
Yeah.
was 2017, 2018, we had an extremely 85% of our pie was direct sold advertising,
Yeah.
and that made me very nervous. And
Mm,
so we started, I'm like, we're going to diversify this revenue stream. We're going to figure out how to do this. And so fast forward, um, the pie is comprised of um, individual memberships, which, other news organizations call subscriptions, corporate memberships, or we call them newsroom partnerships, but these are corporate support for independent local journalism. It's not very transactional, but it's you could think of it like a corporate membership. Competitive philanthropy. When I say competitive philanthropy, I mean these are applying for grants that suit us and that allow us to do journalism. Direct sold advertising, providing marketing services to, so sort of we have a boutique content agency called Source Brand Solutions that lives inside of the organization. So we provide marketing services to small businesses. So this can be things like website design, paid social, paid Google ads, messaging, content management, sponsored content, those kinds of things, right? So agency services for small businesses. And finally, programmatic advertising. So we do some programmatic um,
yeah.
that fills in the gaps. So we wanted to try to create more slices in the pie so that we could grow the pie.
Yep.
And and we've been able to largely successfully do that. But the long-term strategy was we could take a hit on any one of those legs or slices, and it wouldn't kill the business. Um, and that's kind of where we are right now.
Are any of those unexpected? Any of those? There's
Um,
six buckets.
yeah, I wouldn't say they're unexpected. No, because I each one of those things was something that we planned for
Mm-hmm.
and tried to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that you had asked about emerging
Oh yeah.
revenue streams. Um, I think that it's not so much about emerging revenue streams, but it's places where the growth potential is highest.
Yes.
Um, we think that there's a lot of growth potential in direct sold advertising and marketing to small and local businesses. Um, I think this is a lot about the story that you're telling. So this goes back to the wisdom of Kenny, the
Yeah.
book of Kenny,
Yeah.
and thinking through about the value proposition that you're offering to a local business. We think there's a tremendous upside right now in reader revenue.
Yep.
I don't think we've gotten to the bottom of that barrel at all. But I think it's about you got to continually listen to an audience and provide things that the audience wants and needs and give them an opportunity to pay for it. And the corollary to that are things like we don't make very much money in events right now,
Yeah.
but we do a lot of events. So one of the things that we're trying to think through is how do you create monetization opportunities for brands that to get next to events that you're doing that there will be an audience for.
Yeah.
I think that that's an emerging opportunity for us. I don't think we've quite figured that out yet.
Would you put events in one of the six buckets, or is it its own?
It'd be its own separate thing. I mean,
Okay.
because an event is, it can be something that the newsroom does. So it's like
Yeah.
sponsorship around, a conversation with U.S. Senator whomever.
Yeah.
Um, it can be, it could be a wine tasting. It could
Yeah.
be so there's a million different ways that you can kind of skin that cat, so to speak. Um, it's just about for us, a lot of that, our focus with events has been very newsy and community focused, and we really haven't had a revenue focus on that. I think that that'll be something that we'll grow into over the next couple of years as we sort of develop a strategy around it.
And it would make sense that you have to develop a strategy around it because you're not going to
Yeah.
stop doing events because events is core to your values, right? Like bringing
Yeah,
people
right. I
together.
mean, bringing people together is core to the values. So it's not like we're going to stop doing them. It's going to be about thinking through how do you tie revenue to them in a way that adds to the value proposition, doesn't detract from it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I want to respect your time, and I know we're at
No,
time.
thanks. Yeah, I
Um,
appreciate it.
but do you have time to give just any last bit of advice for again, just to keep it in mind, the audience for this is going to be city regional magazine publishers, business journal publishers, some
Hmm.
Lion publishers, um,
Hmm.
some trades. So
Hmm.
legacy media, and then some new emerging media, um, and facing
Yeah,
challenges
sure.
every day.
I mean, I think now more than ever, publishers have to be thinking about creating organizational cultures where failing and learning is viewed as something as the most valuable thing that you can have. Um, if you want people to work in this business, which is a difficult, hard, risk-prone business, you have to create a culture and an environment where they feel safe to try to save the business or to reinvent the business. And that when they do that and it doesn't work out, their career isn't on the line. And the only people that can do that are their CEOs and their GMs and their publishers.
Yes.
If you want people to innovate, then you have to create a culture where you have a tolerance for managed risk. And if you don't do that, then don't blame your staff when they don't take managed risks on your behalf. So that's my advice because I think the disruption is I don't think the disruption is over, and I don't think I just think it's coming at us from different places. So you've got to trust your staff to do things on platforms you don't understand and aren't sure that it makes sense. Um, you have to trust their wisdom too. You can have you got to have it, you know, a voice in the game, but you have to create an environment where people can take a risk on your behalf and it can fail, and there can be a way that you can unpack that and understand it and learn from it and then go again. Um, so that's my advice.
You got a book in you, man. You got a book in you, like
Yeah.
something like living in disruption or embracing disruption. You know what I mean? Like there's a vibe. That's why I wanted to interview you. There's a vibe there,
Thanks.
which is
I appreciate it. I mean, I've had other people say that. I've never just taken the time to sit down and try to put it together because I think it's hard for me to think that I'm doing anything that's worth writing a book about.
nobody thinks that, right? Yeah, you don't think that, but you got to let other people call it out of you, right? Other
Yeah,
people
I
get to say,
appreciate. Yeah,
"I see that." Um,
I do appreciate that.
Did I buy you Dual Transformation, or which book did I?
You bought me Small Giants,
Small Giants.
which
Okay,
I've
that's a good one.
which I've started.
Are you a Dual Transformation guy? Did you do you know that book?
I don't know that book.
I'm getting it out too. I'm getting. I want to beat
Okay.
you so bad at this game of book sending.
Oh, cool. That's great. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I just ordered one that my revenue manager put me onto called, I think it's called Unreasonable Hospitality.
So good. So good.
Okay, good. Because I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that one because it sort of fits our value proposition and the way that we like to talk to our community. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. How did you like Monica Guzman's book?
It's the jam. It is the jam. So I'm not all the way
Yeah,
through, but I got a good bit through it. And
he's awesome.
I
I
feel
mean,
like
like,
I got the heart of it,
mhm,
and it's already just for anybody listening. It's a book that is about the cure for the radical division that we're experiencing as a culture is
yep,
a word called curiosity. Basically, that's I
yep.
think.
She's a really good. I mean, I really consider her a friend, and she's
Oh, you
done
know her?
incredible. Yeah, I know her personally. Yeah, she's yeah, it's another story entirely how we met, but we've had her, like, she made a stop in Mansfield on her book tour. Yeah, I rep her all the time just because I just think she's amazing. She'd be a great interview for you.
I'm
Um,
on it. I'm on it.
um, she's doing a ton of work with an organization called Braver Angels,
Yep.
which is a community kind of led organization that works across political divides. This is hard work, Johnny. I mean, that they are trying to help people learn how to do.
Yeah.
Um, but she's the real deal, you know.
Gosh.
Um, she's the real deal.
No, I knew it early, man. I started reading it, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
She's
I
really
mean, her book is
same
like
thing.
her book, Amanda Ripley's work on conflict is literally at the core of a lot of the, like, when we do hard journalism, like, these principles live at the core of what we do. Um,
Yeah. And here it is,
because
right?
you know, curiosity, yeah, it's just really good. It's really good. I think you'll enjoy it. Well,
Yeah.
listen, I got to jump because I got
Yeah.
an event at 6 that I got to
So
get to,
fun.
but thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it.
I had a great time with you, Jay. Thank you.
All right,
Take it easy.
we'll talk soon. Thanks, buddy.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.